When I look back at my journey of learning English, I remember one thing very clearly. It wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, and it wasn't perfect, but it was worth it. You see, when you start learning a language, especially English, the first thing that hits you is fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being laughed at, fear of not sounding smart enough. And this fear keeps most people stuck. But let me tell you something very honestly. Mistakes are the stepping stones to mastery. The more mistakes you make, the faster you learn. When I was younger, I didn't have teachers from abroad. I didn't have expensive classes, and I didn't have the internet the way you do now. What I had was curiosity and determination. Every single morning, I forced myself to practice. I remember running to the hotels where foreigners stayed just to practice English with them. I didn't care if my grammar was broken, I didn't care if they laughed, because I knew if I didn't open my mouth, my knowledge would never grow. I realized something powerful. Confidence matters more than perfection. People don't remember your mistakes, they remember your courage. In the beginning, I would translate every word in my head. It was slow, painful, and frustrating. But slowly, I stopped thinking about being perfect. I started focusing on expressing my ideas, my emotions, my thoughts, and that's when real progress came. You don't learn English by memorizing thousands of words. You learn it by living it, by speaking, by listening, by using it every single day, even if it's just a little bit. Many people give up because they think English is too hard, but the truth is, the only thing that makes it hard is your mindset. If you treat it like a subject, you'll always feel pressure. If you treat it like a tool, you'll enjoy using it. I didn't learn English to pass exams, I learned it because I wanted to connect with the world. And that reason gave me energy every single day. There were days when I felt hopeless, when I thought, maybe this isn't for me, maybe I'll never sound like a native speaker. But then I asked myself, do I want to sound perfect or do I want to be understood? The answer was clear. I wanted to share my ideas, my dreams, my vision. And for that, my imperfect English was more than enough. So my friend, if you're struggling with English, remember this. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be persistent. Don't be afraid of laughter. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Speak, listen, repeat, fail, and try again. Every word you speak with courage is a step closer to fluency. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll look back and say, this is how I learned English quickly. Because the truth is, it's not about speed, it's about consistency. It's not about knowing everything, it's about never giving up. And if I can do it, if a boy with broken English could stand one day and speak to the world, then you can too. Believe in yourself and keep moving forward. When I first started my journey of learning English, the very first step I discovered was this. You must embrace mistakes as your teachers, not your enemies. This was the hardest lesson to accept, but once I understood it, everything changed. You see, when people begin learning English, the biggest obstacle is not vocabulary, not grammar, not pronunciation, it's fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of embarrassment, fear of people laughing. This fear is so powerful that it silences many before they even try. And I was no different. I remember the first time I tried to speak English with a foreigner. My tongue was heavy, my sentences were broken, my words were half correct. And yes, people laughed. I felt embarrassed, small, and foolish. For a moment, I thought to myself, maybe English is not for me. But then I realized something. If I stopped speaking out of fear, I would never learn. I asked myself, what is the worst that could happen? Someone laughs, someone corrects me, so what? That laughter would last for a moment, but the lesson I would learn would stay forever. And from that day, I promised myself that every mistake I made would be a brick in the foundation of my fluency. This became my first step in learning English quickly. Embrace mistakes, welcome them, even chase them. Every time I mispronounced a word, I remembered it more strongly the next time. Every time my grammar was wrong, the correction became carved into my mind. Mistakes became my greatest teachers, far more powerful than textbooks or classrooms. I realized that language is like learning how to ride a bicycle. The first time you ride, you fall. The second time, you wobble. The third time, you fall again. But with every fall, your body remembers, your balance improves, your confidence grows. One day you ride without even thinking about it. That is how English works. If you never allow yourself to fall, to make mistakes, you will never learn how to balance. The problem is that most people spend years studying English on paper, memorizing words and rules, but they never dare to use them. They lock their English inside their minds, afraid that if they speak, someone will judge them. But here's the truth. A word spoken incorrectly is worth more than 1,000 words memorized silently, because the spoken mistake brings you closer to real communication, while silent memorization keeps you stuck in fear. When I began practicing English with foreigners, I made hundreds of mistakes every single day. Sometimes I said words that didn't exist. Sometimes I mixed up tenses. Sometimes my sentences made no sense at all. But here's what happened. The more mistakes I made, the more confident I became. I was no longer afraid of being wrong, because I was already wrong so many times that it didn't hurt anymore. And with every mistake, I improved a little. Slowly, my broken sentences turned into simple sentences, then simple sentences turned into fluent thoughts. And all of this started with the courage to fail. If you want to learn English quickly, remember this. Your mistakes are not a sign of weakness. They are proof of progress. Every mistake means you are trying, you are practicing, you are moving forward. The only people who never make mistakes are those who never try. But those who never try never succeed. Think of children. How do they learn their mother tongue? By making countless mistakes. A child says the wrong word, the parent corrects them, and they try again. The child doesn't stop speaking out of embarrassment. They keep going, laughing at their mistakes, until one day they are fluent. Why then, as adults, are we so afraid of looking foolish? Why do we let pride stop us from learning? I decided to think like a child again. I gave myself permission to sound silly, to sound broken, to sound wrong, and this unlocked my learning speed. Because the less pressure I put on myself to be perfect, the faster I improved. Perfection is slow, courage is fast. If you want speed, choose courage. So, my friend, if you are starting your journey with English, make this your first step. Embrace mistakes. Don't hide from them, don't fear them, and don't feel ashamed of them. Every time you speak and fail, you are building fluency. Every wrong word is an investment in your future English. The more mistakes you collect, the sooner you will reach confidence. After I embraced mistakes as the first step of learning English, I realized something even more powerful. Confidence matters more than perfection. This became my second step, and it completely transformed the way I learned. You see, many people think that the secret to learning English is having perfect grammar, a big vocabulary, or flawless pronunciation. But let me tell you the truth I discovered. None of that matters if you don't have the courage to speak. A person with confidence but broken English will always go further than a person with perfect English locked inside their mind. When I started speaking English, I was far from perfect. My grammar was full of holes, my pronunciation was not clear, and sometimes I even created sentences that made people laugh. But I stood tall and kept speaking. And you know what? People respected me for my courage, not for my accuracy. They remembered my willingness to try, not the mistakes I made. That's when I realized confidence itself is a language. When you speak with confidence, people listen. When you speak with hesitation, even perfect words lose their power. Confidence became my shield against fear. I told myself, yes, my English is not perfect, but I will still speak, I will still try, I will still express myself. And that decision made all the difference. Instead of hiding in silence, I gave myself permission to shine, even with flaws. Think about it. How many times have you stopped yourself from speaking English because you thought, what if I say it wrong? That hesitation is the real enemy, not the mistake itself. The hesitation kills your progress before you even begin. The truth is, most people don't even notice your small mistakes. They are too busy focusing on your ideas, your energy, your confidence, and even if they do notice, it doesn't matter, because what they will remember is the courage you showed to communicate. I realized that perfection is an illusion. Even native speakers are not perfect. They make grammar mistakes, they forget words, they stumble in their speech, but do they stop speaking? No. They keep going with confidence. So why should we hold ourselves back? Why should we think we need to be perfect before we can open our mouths? If perfection was required, no one in the world would ever speak. The second step, therefore, is to build confidence like a muscle. And how do you do that? By practicing, by speaking, by putting yourself out there, even when you feel nervous. Confidence doesn't magically appear. It grows every time you act with courage. The first time I spoke with foreigners, my hands were shaking. The second time, I was still nervous. The third time, I was a little more comfortable. And by the 10th time, I felt natural. Every attempt was like lifting weights in a gym. Slowly, my confidence grew stronger until speaking English felt less like a challenge and more like a habit. Confidence also comes from changing the way you look at English. Don't treat it as a test where you can pass or fail. Treat it as a bridge, a connection. When I spoke English, I wasn't thinking, I must be correct. I was thinking, I want to share my thoughts, I want to connect with this person. And when your focus shifts from perfection to communication, your fear disappears. You stop worrying about every word and you start enjoying the conversation. That is where true confidence begins. I'll share something that changed my mindset completely. One day, after speaking broken English to a foreign visitor, I apologized to him for my poor grammar. He smiled and said, I didn't notice your mistakes. I just admire your courage to speak my language. That moment stayed with me forever. It showed me that people don't care if you're perfect. They care if you're genuine, if you're confident, if you're willing to connect. From that day on, I never apologized for my English again. I just spoke with confidence, no matter what. So remember, after you embrace mistakes as your first step, the next step is to wear confidence like armor. Don't wait to be perfect, because perfection will never come. Instead, walk into every conversation with courage. Speak with energy, with passion, with belief in yourself, because English is not just about words, it's about presence. And when you stand tall with confidence, your words, no matter how simple, will have power. After I embraced mistakes as the first step and built confidence as the second step, I discovered something equally important. The third step in learning English quickly. Practice every single day, even in the smallest ways. You see, English is not learned in a single day, in a single book, or in a single class. It is learned through consistent effort, through daily contact, through making it a part of your life. Many people fail because they treat English like a subject in school. They study hard for a few weeks, then stop, then start again, then stop again. This on and off pattern slows you down. But if you make English a daily habit, like brushing your teeth or eating your meals, progress becomes unstoppable. When I was young, I didn't have internet videos, I didn't have apps, and I didn't have a classroom full of resources. But what I did have was persistence. Every single morning, I gave myself some kind of practice. Sometimes it was speaking to foreigners at the hotel. Sometimes it was listening to English radio, even if I understood only a few words. And sometimes it was repeating sentences out loud to myself. It didn't matter how small the practice was. What mattered was that I never skipped a day. That daily repetition built momentum, and momentum is the secret to speed. Think of it this way. If you go to the gym once a month and lift heavy weights, will you become strong? No. But if you go every day, even for just 20 minutes, you will see results. Learning English is the same. You don't need to spend 10 hours a day. You just need to practice a little bit, but every single day. Consistency beats intensity. That is how you grow quickly. I remember a powerful lesson during my journey. There were days when I was tired, days when I had no motivation, days when I thought, maybe I'll skip practice today. But I reminded myself, one skipped day becomes two become a week, and soon you lose your flow. So I made a promise to myself, even if I had only 10 minutes, I would do something in English. Read one page, listen to one conversation, speak one sentence. Those small daily acts became the foundation of my fluency. And here's the magic. Small practices compound. At first, you may not notice progress, you may feel stuck, but after weeks and months, you suddenly realize that the words are coming faster, the sentences feel smoother, and your confidence is growing. That is the hidden power of daily practice. It sneaks up on you, and then one day, you surprise yourself. The mistake most people make is thinking they need the perfect environment to practice. They wait for the right teacher, the right class, the right moment. But the truth is, the world is your classroom, and every day gives you opportunities. If you are eating, read the labels in English. If you are watching a movie, turn on English subtitles. If you are walking, repeat new words in your head. If you are alone, speak to yourself in English. Practice doesn't always mean studying with a book. It means surrounding yourself with English so that your brain starts to see it as normal. There is a saying, we become what we repeatedly do. If you repeatedly use English every day, it will become part of you. But if you treat it like a subject you visit once in a while, it will always feel foreign. For me, I didn't just study English, I lived it. I looked for it in conversations, in signs, in music, in opportunities. That constant practice, even if imperfect, made me improve faster than I ever imagined. Another secret I discovered is to practice without pressure. Don't think of practice as homework, think of it as play. Enjoy the process. Sing English songs, watch English movies, talk with friends, write small notes in English. When you make practice fun, you will never run out of energy. I didn't enjoy memorizing grammar rules, but I loved talking to people, so I made speaking my practice. That kept me motivated, and motivation made consistency easy. So if you want to learn English quickly, the third step is this. Practice every day. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait until you feel ready. Do it now, do it daily, and do it consistently. Even 5 minutes is better than zero, because in the end, it is not the big effort you make once, but the small efforts you make every day that build your future fluency. After embracing mistakes as the first step, building confidence as the second step, and practicing daily as the third step, I realized something that completely shifted my mindset. The fourth step was this. Stop treating English as a subject and start treating it as a tool. For many years, English was taught to me as just another subject in school. There were textbooks, exams, grammar rules, and endless lists of vocabulary. And because it was presented as a subject, I approached it like math or history, something to memorize for a test and then forget. But that way of learning gave me nothing. I could pass exams, but when I tried to speak, my mind went blank. It felt like all my English knowledge was trapped inside a cage, locked away, useless in the real world. One day, I asked myself a simple question. Why am I learning English? And the answer changed everything. I wasn't learning English just to score marks in school. I wasn't learning it to impress teachers. I was learning English because I wanted to connect with people, to open doors, to access knowledge, to see the world beyond my small city. And when I realized this, English stopped being a subject for me. It became a tool, a bridge to opportunities. That shift of perspective was powerful, because when you treat English like a subject, you always feel pressure. You're afraid of making mistakes, afraid of being graded, afraid of not being perfect. But when you treat it as a tool, perfection doesn't matter anymore. What matters is, can I use this tool to build something? Can I use it to express myself, to learn, to communicate? Suddenly, English became alive for me. It was no longer about remembering rules. It was about using the language to live. Think about it like this. When a carpenter picks up a hammer, he doesn't think, is my hammer perfect? Am I holding it exactly the way the rulebook says? No, he just uses it to build something. The hammer is not the goal. The house is. English is your hammer, your screwdriver, your tool. Don't worry about holding it perfectly. Use it to build your future. When I shifted my mindset, my learning accelerated. Instead of memorizing word lists, I started using those words to talk about my life. Instead of cramming grammar rules, I started writing simple thoughts in a diary. Instead of studying English for exams, I used English to learn about the world. I read books, I listened to speeches, I practiced conversations, not because a teacher told me to, but because I wanted to, and that desire made me unstoppable. Let me give you an example. In school, when we were told to write an essay in English, it felt like torture. I would worry about mistakes, about grammar, about the marks I would get. But later, when I started writing short notes to myself in English about my dreams, my struggles, my plans, I didn't care about grammar anymore. I cared about expressing my heart. That's when writing became enjoyable, because now English was not a subject to study. It was a tool to think, to reflect, to dream. Another moment that proved this lesson to me was when I first used English to connect with people from different countries. Suddenly, I was talking to someone from the other side of the world, someone I would never have met without English. And I realized this is the real power of the language. It connects human beings. At that moment, I stopped worrying about exams and grades forever. If you are learning English right now, I want you to ask yourself, are you treating it as a subject or as a tool? If it feels heavy, boring, stressful, then maybe you are still stuck in the subject mindset. Shift your perspective. Use English to learn about things you love: music, technology, sports, business, movies. Use English to make friends online, to share your thoughts, to watch inspirational videos. Make English serve you instead of you serving English. When you make this shift, practice no longer feels like a burden. You stop asking, am I right? And start asking, am I understood? You stop memorizing for exams and you start using English for life. And that is when the language becomes yours. So the fourth step is clear. Stop studying English just for exams and start living it as a tool for growth, for connection, for opportunity. Once you do that, learning becomes faster, easier, and far more meaningful. After embracing mistakes as the first step, building confidence as the second, practicing daily as the third, and treating English as a tool as the fourth, I discovered the fifth step that changed everything. Focus on communication, not native perfection. This realization freed me from a prison I had built for myself. For years, I believed that if I didn't sound like a native speaker, I wasn't good enough. I would compare my accent, my vocabulary, even the speed of my speaking with people from America or Britain, and every time I felt small. I thought maybe I'll never be able to speak like them, and because of this, I often held myself back. But one day, I asked myself, why am I learning English? Is it to become someone else, or is it to express who I am? The answer was clear. I wasn't learning English to replace my identity. I was learning it to share my ideas, my stories, my dreams with the world. That's when I realized perfection is not the goal. Communication is. Think about it. Imagine two people. The first has flawless grammar, perfect pronunciation, but is too scared to speak. The second makes mistakes, mixes tenses, has a strong accent, but speaks confidently, and people understand. Who is more successful? Of course, the second person. Because language is not a decoration, it's a bridge. Its purpose is not to be perfect, but to connect. When I started focusing on communication, my mindset completely changed. I stopped chasing native perfection and started chasing clarity. I didn't care if my accent was different, as long as people could understand me. I didn't care if my grammar had mistakes, as long as my message reached their hearts. And once I let go of perfection, speaking English became lighter, easier, more enjoyable. I remember speaking at an international conference for the first time. My English was not smooth. I knew I was making mistakes, but I looked at the audience and I saw them nodding, smiling, listening closely. They weren't counting my errors. They were feeling my passion. That day I understood. People don't connect to your grammar, they connect to your energy. The problem with perfection is that it slows you down. It makes you hesitate before every word. It forces you to edit yourself while speaking. It keeps you silent when you should be expressing yourself. Perfection creates pressure, and pressure kills fluency. But communication gives freedom. When your only goal is to be understood, your mind relaxes, your words flow, and your confidence grows. Think of children again. They don't care about perfect grammar, they just want to be understood. A child says, I go to park. The grammar is wrong, but do you understand what they mean? Of course. And what do parents do? They don't laugh, they smile, they encourage. That's how the child learns, through communication, not through chasing perfection. So why, as adults, do we torture ourselves with the idea of perfection? Why do we stop ourselves from speaking because we don't sound like a Hollywood actor? Remember this, even native speakers don't speak perfectly. They use slang, they make grammar mistakes, they forget words. If perfection was required, no one in the world would be fluent. When I changed my focus to communication, something amazing happened. I became more fluent, faster, because now I wasn't wasting time judging myself. I was simply speaking, sharing, connecting. And the more I spoke, the more natural my English became. Ironically, by forgetting about perfection, I actually improved my English more quickly. Let me tell you a small secret. People admire your accent. They admire your effort. They admire the courage it takes to speak a language that isn't yours. Your uniqueness makes you special. You don't need to erase it to impress anyone. You just need to use English as a tool to make your voice heard. So the fifth step in learning English quickly is this. Stop trying to sound perfect and start trying to be understood. Speak with clarity, with honesty, with confidence. Don't be afraid of your accent. It is part of your story. Don't be afraid of grammar mistakes. They will fade as you practice. What matters most is that your ideas, your dreams, your truth reach the other person. After embracing mistakes as the first step, building confidence as the second, practicing daily as the third, treating English as a tool as the fourth, and focusing on communication instead of perfection as the fifth, I discovered the sixth and final step. Persistence is the real shortcut. This might sound strange. How can persistence be a shortcut? Isn't a shortcut supposed to be something quick and easy? But here's the truth I learned. There is no magic pill for learning English. No secret trick that will make you fluent overnight. The only real shortcut is persistence, the ability to keep going day after day, even when you feel stuck, even when progress seems slow, even when everyone else gives up. When I was learning English, there were countless times I felt hopeless. Times when I thought, I've been practicing for months, but I still sound terrible. Maybe this isn't for me. Times when I looked at others speaking fluently and felt small. Times when I was laughed at, corrected, or ignored. And in those moments, quitting felt easier than continuing. But I reminded myself, persistence is not about winning today, it's about not losing tomorrow. Most people fail not because they lack talent, but because they lack persistence. They start with excitement, but the moment learning becomes hard, they stop. They look for shortcuts, apps, tricks, hacks, but when those don't give instant results, they quit. And that's why they stay stuck. But those who persist, those who keep pushing through boredom, through failure, through slow progress, they are the ones who become fluent. Persistence is powerful because it compounds. One day of practice feels small. 1 week of practice feels ordinary. But 1 year of consistent practice feels extraordinary. Think about water dripping on a rock. One drop does nothing, but thousands of drops carve deep holes into the stone. That's what persistence does to your brain. Every day you touch English, even in a small way, you carve fluency deeper into yourself. I remember many mornings when I woke up tired and thought, maybe I'll skip practicing today. But then I remembered my dream of connecting with the world, and I forced myself to practice anyway. Sometimes my practice was weak, sometimes it was short, but I never let myself stop completely. And over time, that persistence built momentum. The habit of showing up, no matter what, became my greatest strength. Here's something I want you to understand. Fluency is not about speed, it's about consistency. You can learn quickly if you are persistent, but you will never learn if you stop and start again and again. Imagine planting a tree. If you water it every day, it will grow strong. But if you water it once, then leave it dry for weeks, then water again, the tree will wither. English is the same. Persistence is the water that keeps it alive. Another thing I realized is that persistence requires patience. Too many learners expect instant results. They want to sound fluent in 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and when it doesn't happen, they feel disappointed. But fluency is like climbing a mountain. You can't jump to the top, you must take step after step, no matter how slow. If you stop halfway, you'll never see the view. But if you keep climbing, one day you'll reach the peak. And when you look back, you'll realize that every small step was worth it. Persistence also means forgiving yourself. There were times when I skipped a day, when I failed, when I felt I was moving backwards. But instead of quitting, I started again the next day. That is persistence, not being perfect, but refusing to give up. Because fluency doesn't come to those who never fall. It comes to those who fall but rise again, again, and again. I want you to remember this. Persistence is not just about discipline, it's about love. If you truly love your dream, if you truly want to connect with the world, you will persist. Because when your reason is strong enough, your persistence becomes natural. My reason was clear. I wanted to connect, to learn, to grow. That reason gave me the strength to keep going, even when progress was invisible. So the 6th step in learning English quickly is persistence. Not talent, not luck, not shortcuts. Just the simple decision to keep moving forward, no matter how slow, no matter how hard. Because in the end, persistence is the only shortcut that works.